Hello, and welcome back to the Purposeful Shift, the podcast for women who are looking for a little bit more joy, happiness, purpose, or fulfillment in their lives. Today, I am absolutely delighted to be joined by the wonderful Kelly Peters. Kelly is a poet who has recently made a very significant life shift by moving out of her home and leaving her job to live full-time in a van in a new city. Kelly is pursuing her love of poetry and spoken word, and I am so thrilled that Kelly has kindly offered to speak with me today and to share her story. Kelly, thank you and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Lovely to be here.
I'm so excited that we're finally getting to talk because there are so many things I want to ask you about and so many things that interest me. But before we get into that and all of the tangents that I'm probably going to take us on, can you tell me, maybe if we could go back a little bit, so before you undertook this big change in your life, what did life look like for you? Who was Kelly before this big change?
Yeah, sure. So I had been a single mum for a very long time, about 17 years. So I'd brought my children up on my own. I'd managed to work my way up in the field of education and had a fairly good job as a pastoral year leader in a school, which was a job I loved, but took up a lot of my time. I was also living in a rented house, 3-bedroom house in Somerset in a beautiful area, but I was an empty nester because the kids had both just gone off to university and actually the oldest one had left. And I was just starting to think, who am I now? And my life just felt quite empty, to be honest, Emma. I was living to work. So although I loved my job, it was taking all of my time. I was working every evening just to stay on top of things. And financially, I was really struggling. I could pay for everything, pay the bills, pay the rent, but I had nothing left over every month. And I really felt that I just wasn't living. I hadn't been on holiday for about 8 years. If I went out for one meal a month, I would spend the rest of the month regretting it, thinking, shouldn't have done that. And I just thought, there's got to be more to life than this. I remember saying to my mum, my life is coming to see you on a Saturday morning and going to the library and going to work. And there was literally nothing else, maybe seeing friends once a month. So it was very different from the life I'm living now.
Thanks, Kelly. So thinking about like that nudge that something needed to change, what do you think was like the primary driver? Was it that kind of feeling of living to work and just feeling like there must be more to life than this? Or do you think there were other things involved?
I think it was that, but there were other things involved. So after 48 years of being on this planet, I finally came out as lesbian this time last year. And I think that was the beginning of the nudge, if I'm honest, Emma. I think I suddenly realised that I'd, for a long time, not been living the life that I wanted, but been living the life that I thought was expected of me by society as a woman, as a mum, etc. And of course, as many women our age will know, menopause hits and suddenly you don't care what anyone else thinks. And so I was kind of hit by that I just thought, I've only got one life and I've got to live it. Also, my mum had been through quite serious health challenges and I learned that they were hereditary. And it really made me think, I'm 48 now. I might only have another 10 years of good health. And am I going to spend it doing this job and going to the library at weekends? Is this it? So I think it was a few things really. But I just got to the point where I thought, I can't keep doing this. I'm just not happy. And that led to me finally thinking, how can I change this? What can I do? And unfortunately, it just kept coming back to financial things that even if I move house, I'd been in that house for quite a long time. So the rent was lower than rents on a 1-bedroom flat would be. And everyone will understand this with the cost of living, etc. Everything had risen so much. And I thought, I could move to a smaller flat, but I'd be in the same financial position. So the only thing that I could think to do that would allow me to actually live a bit more was to move into a van. And it was something I'd explored for a few years before, and the time hadn't quite been right. But I think last year I just thought, right, it's now or never.
And of course, so many people are being drawn to a more
Absolutely.
nomadic lifestyle, whether that is living in a van or whether that's through a form of house sitting and being more free and mobile to move around to different places and experience life in a totally different way. And it just feels to me like it must be so freeing to be able to live like that and to obviously with challenges, but
Yeah, it
freeing at the same
is.
time.
It is. And I think I do feel that I am kind of free from a lot of the expectations now. And that's lovely. And I can live life a bit more on my terms than I could before, because like everyone in this country, we're all bound by these expectations that we should have a job and a house and a car and all these things. And actually, that was something else that I wanted to talk about to you, was that it's been so freeing because of getting rid of everything. My van is a long wheelbase van, but it's not that big. So I went from a 3-bedroom house I'd been living in for 11 years, but also about 40 years worth of stuff that I had to get rid of and condense. And actually, I don't miss any of it. And so that's been wonderful, really, not having that constant sort of tug of, oh, I've got to sort the downstairs cupboard and I've got to get rid of this and I've got rid of that. I do have that slightly in smaller ways, that now I'm living in the van, I think, oh, actually, that's too big for the van. It's got to go. But yes, in general, it is really, really freeing.
It sounds like as well that it's a really mindful way of living to be that conscious of your possessions and presumably what you purchase and how that
Absolutely.
actually enriches or doesn't enrich your life in some way. I think it feels like there's a lot of benefits to that
Mm,
way of living that we don't practice when we are in a house and we've got space and we just buy more storage for more stuff that we don't actually need, but we just continue to buy because of consumerism and how we're totally exploited by marketing and advertising.
absolutely. And actually, that also translates into things that we do need, like food and water. Because you've got such a limited space, I just buy so much less than I used to. Like many women, you know, go to the supermarket and you throw things in your trolley, don't you? Thinking, oh yeah, I'll make something with that. But now I have to be really intentional because I just don't have the room to store it. So I've got a small drawer for dried food and a small fridge. And if it doesn't fit in there, then I'm not buying it. And I actually have to use it. So there isn't the thing that probably you've had where you clear out your cupboards and at the back of the cupboards, there's out of date food and that kind of thing. And also water. I don't have a huge place to store water. So I'm really mindful of how much water I use now for washing up. I have to make sure that I've got enough and that it's only a small amount. And so, yes, it does really make you mindful about all of the resources that you're using.
Yeah. And I think there's so many lessons and other conversations that could stem from that mindfulness about resources and being really intentional, which we probably won't delve into
Yes.
today. But there's all of the things that I guess that as a society we're being asked to consider would
Yeah.
almost be easier to consider and manage and do living in such a small space compared to the luxury of the space that we have around us.
Yes, 100%. And with the cost of living, I just don't see how people are managing, really. Um, because it's just going up and up, isn't it? And with the fuel crisis at the moment, although that is a challenge in a van at the moment, the fuel crisis is kind of hitting me at the moment. The diesel price is huge compared to the costs that people have got in houses. I do feel very grateful and lucky.
And of course, it's pros and cons, isn't there, of everything? And I
Absolutely.
guess
Yes.
the big danger, I imagine, if something were to go wrong with the van, that is everything in one
Mm,
place. So if your
yeah.
van needs to go into the mechanics and it takes a
Yes.
week or a month, then that's a big disruption. But then think again about that rise in more nomadic options. maybe you could go house sit for a month or something. So there's probably lots of
Absolutely.
opportunities still, even when you are faced with those challenges.
Absolutely. And I think actually one of the things I've learned over this year is that anything can happen and will, but
Mhm.
actually you'll always be okay. And
Yeah.
something always turns up, doesn't it? And I am very lucky to have lots of lovely family and friends. And so if that did happen, I know I'd still have a bed. And I know a lot of people don't have that option, but I know I'd be okay. And there are pet sitting, house sitting options. I'm sure I could find something. But, fingers crossed it's not happened yet, Emma.
Brilliant. Let's hope it stays that way. But like you say, it's inevitable, isn't it, at some point
Yeah,
with
absolutely.
mechanics.
Absolutely.
But that reminds me of something. So on my laptop, I have some screensavers that I've created. Went through like an affirmation stage of creating screensavers that were kind of connected to affirmations. And one of them was something along the lines of, you're only one thought away from a totally different perspective of life. And I guess in that kind of situation, if you change your perspective from, oh my goodness, this is happening, why is this happening to me, to wow, this has happened. What
Yeah.
adventure can I make out of this? What experience can I take from this? What learnings can I get from this? And try and reframe it in a positive way. All of a sudden, okay, yeah, this has happened, but it gives me a chance to go and spend a week's really quality time with so and so who I might not have seen otherwise. And so
Yeah,
I don't know really why I brought that in, but I just
absolutely.
think that mindset shift sounds so simple and it's not always easy to do, especially when we're
No,
facing challenges, but it
no,
can totally change your perspective.
absolutely. And I have to admit, when I first moved into the van, it was a lot, because as you mentioned, I also moved cities. So I moved to Portsmouth, which is where my son lives, and I'd come and stayed here quite a lot and really liked it. But I was very anxious when I first moved into the van. And it would be a lie to say that I wasn't, because there was all the learning about being in a new place, plus having to drive somewhere new every day and find somewhere to park and find a job and all these kind of things. So I did spend a couple of months feeling quite anxious and uptight all the time. But you're right, it was a mind shift, really, that helped me through that. And there were some dark days in the beginning, but I'm pleased to say that, I managed to get through them.
I'm glad to hear that. And I imagine even people who are holidaying in a van or solo travelers, male or female, who are using a van, there's always going to be a worry of risk and security, isn't there? But when
Yeah.
everything you own is also in that van
Yes.
and that is your home, I imagine that anxiety is a very natural feeling. So I'm glad that that's kind of subsided a little for you and you're
Yeah.
feeling a bit more
Thank
settled now.
you. Thank you. I think for me, it was more, I've always been quite comfortable on my own and not really nervous about being places. So I wasn't really nervous about being in the van, but it was probably about driving the van, actually, because she's a big girl. In fact, that's her nickname, that big girl. Um, and she's very wide. And so I'd gone from a tiny little hatchback 3-door car to this huge vehicle. And I'm quite a confident driver. And I thought, oh, I'll be fine. In my school career, I'd driven minibuses. But actually, when you're doing it all day, every day, that was a bit of a challenge. And to think I've got to park it in a city as well. What am I doing? And also to find places where I wasn't going to get a ticket and I wasn't going to annoy people. And I try not to really park around residential areas so that someone doesn't open their windows and they've got a camper van right in front of their house. But obviously in a city, that's a challenge. So I think I was anxious about that kind of thing, but that's definitely subsided. Yeah.
Oh, I'm glad. And I think that they're very legitimate worries to have. And also the park up. I mean, that's just consideration, isn't it? For everybody else, that's you
Yeah.
being a very considerate person and
Oh,
thinking about how you kind of coexist in the environment
yeah,
that's not created for people living in a
absolutely.
van.
And there is a kind of van lifer motto, which is leave no trace. And I know that a lot of people have some strong opinions on van lifers, shall we say, because I think that some people feel that we're somehow cheating the system by not paying in. Actually, we're just trying to exist and just trying to live. And the majority of other van lifers that I've met have a similar mindset to me, where we want to leave no trace on the environment. We don't want to annoy people. We just want to, go about our lives quietly and simply, without causing a mess or anything.
So I wondered, what's changed for you internally now that you are Kelly Peters poet aficionado? What's life like now? What's changed for you, maybe internally or externally?
It still sounds strange to hear people say that, but I love it. Oh, do you know, just everything. I think if someone had told me this time last year that I would be on a podcast with someone talking to me as a poet, I just wouldn't believe them. It's just wild. I always talked about myself as an introvert. So that's the first thing. That was a core belief that I had, that I was an introverted person. I was quiet and introverted, and I was not the kind of person that would stand up on stage. And that would have been like living hell. So now this kind of confidence has come from somewhere, and I like this version of me. I like it. Yeah. So I would say that's been the biggest shift, is having a bit of self-belief and confidence.
That's huge.
Yeah. Yeah.
And do you think that stems back to having the courage to step into the version of yourself that felt more real when you said, okay, this is me, this is who I am, and these are the choices that I'm making? And that then taking those steps, realizing that actually nothing bad has happened. And then that those little acts of courage then build, and your confidence builds as a result of seeing that, yes, I can do this, and 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 I can do this. I can do anything.
Yeah. Yeah. So when I was thinking about making the change and moving into the van, etc., I think at that point that was the only plan. And I was thinking I will somehow find work, etc., and make life flow. But there was something missing, and I've always been a really creative person, and also very ADHD. So I've tried all the different creative things, making things and painting and drawing and all sorts, but nothing ever really stuck. I'd done some creative writing before. So my degree was in English Lit and creative writing, but it had not really stuck for me. So one of the modules I did, for example, was I had to write 3 chapters of a children's novel. And by the time I did that, by the time I'd finished it, I was so bored of the characters and the book that I thought, I'm never going to be a novelist. This is just not for me, because I can't stick to it for this long. However, a couple of years ago, a friend gave me a ticket to see a spoken word poet, Harry Baker, and we went along, and I was just blown away, Emma. I just thought, what is this? This is not poetry like I have seen it or heard it before. It was really real and honest and genuine. And I sat there watching it thinking, I think maybe I could write this kind of thing. And while I was sat in the audience, this line from my first poem came into my head. And I went home and wrote it. But of course, like all of us, I didn't think it was any good, so I kept it to myself for a couple of years. And I think I showed my mum, and that was about it. But I had this little thing in the back of my mind that I really enjoy poetry. And so I was secretly writing quite a bit of it. So then I came across an advert for a master's in creative practice. And I think it said on the advert, are you the kind of person that wants creativity in your life, but you're a bit of a procrastinator and you won't do it unless someone pushes you? And I thought, yep, hands up, that's me. And the thing that came to my head was poetry. And I thought, I would really, really love to be doing that, and to have that as part of my life. And I think when you're a single parent, but any parent, you put the children first, don't you, for so long that you forget who you are. And it was like that was the final piece, really, to the puzzle, that welcoming in creativity to my life. I think that was the moment when I really got excited about living in a van. So I think at that time my van was just being converted and I was getting ready to move in. And I thought, yeah, this is the final piece of the puzzle. If I can do this, whether it turns out to be a long career in poetry is another thing, but actually it's something for me that I just love doing. And that was so joyful.
Amazing. Thank you. And I think there's things that I connect with, like the trying lots of different things and nothing sticking. And then I think, wow,
Yes.
I haven't given myself like 100 hours, let alone the 10,000 hours, which supposedly you need to be able to perfect something.
And I think the reason poetry stuck was because it's such short form that my attention, I can stick to a poem. And actually, I don't get bored of it. I can read it over and over again. But having to sit there for 3 months or however long to write a whole novel, I just don't think I've got that in me, unfortunately. I admire people that have.
I think that's really interesting because you won't know this, I don't think, but I've been trying to write a book for about 3 years and it's so close and I just can't get it
Oh,
over the finish line. And
yeah.
I'd never thought about the fact that maybe it's just too big for me.
Mm.
Maybe, I can do the chapters and I can do bits and pieces, but I can't read a whole book in one go. So maybe anyway, but that's a really interesting, really interesting thought that maybe the size of the activity is something that I need to
Yeah,
reflect on a bit more. So thank
yeah.
you. I would take that and
I
ponder.
don't want to stop you writing your book, Emma, if you're
No,
almost
you won't
finished.
stop me writing the book, but I think
If
it's a
you're almost
really,
finished, I think you should finish.
well, I think I'm almost finished, but who knows? And I tell you what happened. I went on a book writing course and the goal of the course was that after the 3 months, you would write 30,000 words and, 90% of the people or whatever of the students would write their 30,000 words. And of course, they made it competitive because you had to add your numbers to a spreadsheet each week and you had accountability
Mm.
check-ins
Oh my
with a
goodness.
coach. And so, of course, I met my 30,000 words in 3 months. And in my head, 30,000 meant finished. And of course, it
Uh,
wasn't finished. That was,
no,
but my head had joined those two dots together. And then that became a barrier
right,
for me that I'd met 30,000 words. My book must
right.
be finished. And it wasn't finished at all.
Mm.
Anyhow, total tangent. But I just think that's a really useful insight, especially for anybody who has got ADHD and who
Mm.
finds big tasks overwhelming, that
Mm.
chunking to be able to fulfill
Absolutely.
what excites you and what's driving you and what makes you feel passionate. If you can chunk it down, brilliant. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe you're inspiring a whole another generation of poets who wanted to be writers, but feel like they need to abandon
Mm.
that. Now you've given them the opportunity. Here's your chance to be a poet instead.
That would be an awesome thing.
What a
I
legacy.
think as well, the fact that you can literally write a poem about anything. I did write a poem about toileting in the van, as you know. But I think that appeals to me because it's just endless. It's not the same one thing all the time. It's just a different form. And I think I have got such a low boredom threshold. It's always on to the next shiny new thing. But I think, poetry gives me that because each poem is a shiny new thing. So,
Exactly, yeah.
yeah.
You've got a whole collection of dopamine hits just
Yes,
in front of you, haven't you? Like
100%.
one after the
Yeah,
other after the other.
yeah.
And I'm guessing, like, not to try and sound like I'm reducing the effort that goes into poetry, because I'm sure some poems take an awful lot of effort, but
Mm.
I'm also making a massive assumption that if you're in a flow state, maybe you can knock out a poem in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, half an hour, whatever. And so
Yeah.
actually you can keep
Yes.
giving yourself those
Yes.
dopamine hits of
Yeah.
succeeding and accomplishing and
100%.
finishing a task, which
Yeah.
generally people, if they've got ADHD, just completing is a massive challenge. So that
Yeah.
those hits that you keep getting.
100%.
So
Yeah.
totally
And then
waffling.
I think with spoken word as well, you kind of get a double dopamine because then you perform it and you get it again when you share it with someone else. So, um, yeah, yeah, it's just lovely. Can't explain how much I love it and how much joy it's brought to my life. Um, but also in lots of other ways. It's not just about me and the poetry. I think the first open mic I went to, so I went to my first open mic event in November, and what hit me was just how much people show their soul when they tell you their poems. And I thought, we all make judgments about people when we meet them, don't we? And I try to think I'm not a judgy person, but you do. You get a first impression of someone and think they're a certain type of person. And then when they stand up and they speak the words that have come from their heart and their soul, That sounds so cheesy, but honestly, I just love it because it makes me go, there you are. That's who you are. And I just think there's something really wonderful about that, actually. And it's made me connect with people on a much deeper and higher level than I had before. And so that leads on to the, the other wonderful thing that's come from poetry is having a community of poet friends now, which is lovely. And if you think back to what I was saying at the start, where I had no community at all. I lived in a beautiful rural village, but I didn't really know anyone there, apart from acquaintances and neighbours and things. Hadn't made any connections. And I think community's the stuff of life. Over the last year, I really have come to see that more than anything, that's what keeps us happy and okay, is having a community that you feel part of.
Mm, absolutely. I think there's so many elements to that around how we need connection and
100%.
how we need people who lift and inspire us. And I've said before, I say it again, the MA course that we're both on,
Mm,
there's such a mix of people doing a huge variety of different creative
yeah.
endeavors. But when you put everybody together in a room, the way that at the end of a period of time, people feel lifted, encouraged, and inspired by those like-minded individuals, even though the creative passions are so totally different,
Mm,
the just that sense of community that you get from people who are, well, there's multiple things. They're being courageous, they're putting their work out there, they're opening themselves up to criticism, they're finally
mm.
facing fear. Like you said, you've been writing poetry in secret
Yeah.
and now you're sharing it with the world. And you cannot not be inspired by people who are doing the thing, and they're being brave and they're being courageous and they're showing up and they're being themselves and they're putting themselves out there. I don't think anyone could not be inspired by that. So that sense of community and inspiration and people who just understand you. Let's say you could be in an office workplace with 100 people in a shared office space, but not talk to any of them, and you'd feel more lonely than ever, even though you're surrounded by
100%.
100 people. But then you get in a group of 20 people who are like-minded, and all of a sudden you've never felt more at home and more safe.
Yeah,
And it's such a
100%.
powerful feeling.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think our experience on this MA has just been life-changing, really. And that really, when we started the MA and we were lucky enough to go on the most amazing boot camp to Sweden, but it was probably one of the best experiences of my life, just to connect with so many like-minded people. And obviously being in Sweden and in a beautiful location helped, but it was the people. That was the fantastic thing, was just connecting with all these inspirational people. I think it's something that I'll carry with me for the rest of my life,
Mm.
really. And hopefully have made friends for life as well. But it was, like you said, we built this immediate community of creative people, and there's nothing like it to feel accepted and that you can be vulnerable and yourself. And people were really vulnerable and saying, I've not done this before because of this reason. And like me, hiding away in secret, and lots of people didn't know what they wanted to do and that kind of thing. And to see those people grow has just been lovely. I feel like they're all my family and I'm cheering them on.
Yeah, it's like that though, isn't it? You just can't
Yeah.
wait to see other people succeed. The comparison is removed
Yes.
and there's no level of competition. It's
Yeah.
all just about helping lift each other up
Yeah.
and seeing other people succeed and then being inspired by that to help yourself succeed as well, whatever that version of success looks like to you.
Yeah, exactly. And actually that's very similar, I have found, in the poetry community. They are just lovely, lovely people. And the nicest conversations in the world, I think, I had in poetry open mics because everyone's just so lovely. And I really love it when I see poets that I've seen doing really well and going on to do great things. And it's just inspiring because poetry never stops. Poetry will carry on and on and on. And hopefully it's not something that AI is ever going to be able to take over. But
It won't do it as authentically though, will it? I mean, I
No,
think I probably shouldn't say this. I might have to edit it out afterwards. But no, what in the earlier stages of ChatGPT, so going back a couple of years, my friends and I went to stay in a friend's parents' static caravan in Dorset, and we had a lovely time, and we got a thank you card for the parents just to say thank you for letting us stay. And I was thinking, wouldn't it be nice to write a little poem? But my mind was totally blank, so I
yeah,
did turn to AI to write
AI
a
poem.
personalised poem.
Yes,
But
I
back
would,
then, it did the job for me that I needed to do right then. But
yes.
that people aren't going to connect with something that's not
No,
from
I
the
think
heart and the soul. And I think
it
that's the
won't.
power that you're describing, isn't it? The rawness and the authenticity that people bring when they put themselves out there on stage and speak from their heart. You're
Yeah.
literally, you can't really be much more vulnerable than that, other than in a few random circumstances that we won't go into. Cut.
I think we can't be friends anymore.
Yeah,
I
we
think
can't
that
be
is.
friends anymore because you use AI to write a
Yes.
poem.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so back on track. So Kelly, I wanted to ask, I know you said you did your first open mic in November, and we are now recording in April. So
Yeah.
we're kind of 6 months into that journey. How have you found that? What's that been like for you?
The first open mic that I went to in November, I'd connected with the person that runs that open mic event beforehand and said, I'm new to the poetry world. I've just moved to Portsmouth and I'd like to come along and read a poem. And they were really supportive and said, come and sit with me. You'll be fine. But I really remember the fear when I first went up to the mic and I was shaking and I looked up and there was about 60 people in this room and I thought, don't look up again.
60 is quite a large number, isn't
It
it, for
was
your
quite a
first
lot.
time?
It was quite a lot. And I shook through all of it. But then afterwards, I had such lovely feedback that it gave me that little confidence boost to keep going. And I thought, okay, maybe it's not as bad as I think. So last night I actually did an event for the same open mic. They had an acts of resistance evening and they asked me to be one of the showcase people. So there was 3 of us sort of headliners for the event. And I just can't believe it, Emma. I'm just blown away that that's happened to me. I just hope that it carries on. It's wonderful. And it's what I was dreaming of. So I just love it.
It's incredible though, isn't it, to go from first time 6 months ago to headliner. So following your headlining last night, what else is on the radar now? Because I know that you have some other opportunities lined up that we haven't talked about yet.
I do. I'm thrilled to be asked to go on local radio and be interviewed on local radio, which, as well as being interviewed by you, of course, Emma, has just been,
Ooh, the highlight.
yeah, honestly, I've really been looking forward to this. I'm thrilled to be on the Purposeful Shift. But yeah, I was blown away to be asked to do that. And then there might be some festivals in the summer. So I've just heard some news today. I'll keep you posted on that. But
Yep.
yeah, you might see me around some of the festivals this summer. And then I had another wonderful opportunity where I've been asked to be the warm-up act for a fantastic poet from Kent. And I was put in touch with him by someone on our course. So that's another lovely thing that's happened. And yeah, so I think I'm just going to carry on doing what I'm doing. Yeah. And I'm hoping to speak to some publishers in the next few months because my writing has just been prolific really this year. And I can't really believe I'm saying this again, but I do feel that I'm at a point where I could approach publishers now, which again, even in November, the thought of that was out there. But now I'm thinking that is my next step. And I kind of lost the fear. And don't get me wrong, I don't think I'm the world's best poet. But I think what I have got now is just kind of a bit of sense of self-worth that actually, if it's good enough for people to want to listen to, might be good enough that people would want to read it in a book as well. And actually, it might not be for everyone, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And gosh, when we started that boot camp in Sweden, I never would have imagined I'd be speaking like this, Emma. I remember saying, I don't think my poetry's any good, really. So it feels good to be in a place where I can say, yeah, okay, maybe I can do that.
Absolutely. And I think you touched on a few really important points as well, because I think a lot of people have that fear about kind of following their passions and putting their work out there. And obviously the course helps address a lot of that throughout the program. But for those who aren't on the course, that thought process that we all have a voice and we all have a space for our voice, and not everybody will like our voice. But you said that's okay. And the people who do like our voice and they do want to hear what we have to say in whatever format that is, will find us and
Yeah.
they'll stay with us. And those that don't connect, that's okay. They'll connect with somebody else. And we all have a place that we should be able to be ourselves and speak freely and connect with other people who connect with us. And it's almost like that's a barrier, isn't it, that we put up to think that nobody wants to hear from us. No one cares about what we say or what format that appears in. But once you kind of break through that wall, and you say, actually, I deserve to own some space and I'll find my people,
Yeah.
it becomes really freeing.
Yeah. I was just going to say that actually, that it is about realizing it's okay to take up space. I have been such a people pleaser my whole life. But actually it's realizing that people don't care what you're up to. That's really freeing as well. People don't care, and living life for me rather than any expectation. And it is so freeing, like you say. I think we all kind of have this thing that we can't put our work out there unless it's perfect as well. And I know that you're less identified with this, but that again, getting over that hurdle has been huge for me. Because there have been times when I'm saying a poem and I'm thinking, this is not, but sometimes I kind of edit it in the speaking of it when I'm performing it, or I've performed poems and they haven't gone down as well. And by that, I mean that no one comments on them because, as I said before, the poetry world is so lovely. People won't ever say to me, didn't think much of that poem, but they might just not comment on it. And that's how I know that maybe that's not as good as the other ones. But being okay with that kind of editing process has been great as well. Kind of testing things out and failing forward. I like to say it's failing forward. So it's okay if that's not great, because actually I've learned something from that and I've learned what worked and what didn't. And the next time I do it, I'll do it this way. And it is these boundaries we put around ourselves, these walls where we say that we can't release anything into the world unless it's perfect. That's bonkers, isn't it? Because how will we ever learn, I heard something that said the biggest obstacle to human endeavor is not putting things out there, because we don't learn what works and what doesn't. So if we can get over that, then we can move forward. And that's what I try to keep in my brain.
I think that's really powerful. Definitely really powerful words and to keep in mind. My dad used to tell me that if nothing went wrong, you wouldn't learn anything. And that came up a lot when I was doing the camper van conversion, learning to do a camper van conversion from scratch, but also mechanically things kept going wrong with the van and it was in and out of the garage. And so I learned a lot about, not how to do the work, but how various components were affecting others. But I think it is a really good point. Like every time you face that challenge, every time something goes wrong, you learn from that experience. And the same thing with your work. If you don't put it out there, with the podcast episodes, I had a really clear vision of what the podcast would be. And actually what I learned quite quickly was that people who listen to the type of content that I want to share are probably more interested in hearing stories like your own about how people have actually been brave enough and shown the courage and made the changes in their lives, whether they are big dramatic changes like you've made, or whether they're just smaller day-to-day changes to try and find a little bit more joy in their day-to-day. And I just wanted to share something, actually, again, total tangent, but I'm sitting in my garden office, which sounds very grand. It's not, it's just a shed. And I have a vision board because I'm one of those people. And on my vision board, I also have something which is like a list of notes. And it's a coach I was working with, a really lovely coach called Christine. She's incredible. She's so bubbly and you just can't help be energized when you're around her. And she made me do this exercise once, which was anytime I feel happy is when, and then finish the sentence. And I have that in front of me and I have a list of things. So I can see it. The top thing on my list, which is going to sound terrible as a mum, is anytime I feel happy is when I watch the dogs play. I know that should really be about my kids first, shouldn't it? But that's awful. And I'm admitting that to the world. But actually, you know, so we have 2 dogs, again, tangent, sorry, but we have 2 dogs. We have lots of rescue dogs that we fostered and adopted. And so seeing them play makes me really happy because I know that we've taken them out of a situation where they've been effectively in a cage, in a kennel with very little space and very little opportunity to connect with other dogs just because of the situation they're in. So for me, that's a really powerful thing. But to anyone else, that's a really small thing. But if I'm working and I get to see the dogs play, I think to myself, happy, it like triggers my happy thoughts.
Reminds you.
And so, yeah, so I have this list to remind me anytime I feel happy is when I sit in the garden and I feel the sun on my face, or when I take 5 minutes to listen to the birds sing, or when I have a cup of tea in the garden because it's not raining, you know, all of these small things. So for people who can't make that dramatic shift, it's being able to take a step back and realize actually there's lots of things that can make us happy, that if we can recognize what it is for us. And build those in. So yeah, definitely encourage that exercise. Anytime I feel happy is when ... and then having this list where you can see it and just remind yourselves, actually, there's been 5 things today that have made me feel happy. Yeah, life is not so bad.
And I love that idea because I think the last few years we've kind of been flooded with all this advice about what we should do to make ourselves happy. You know, you should eat well, you should exercise. All these things we know. However, they're not always easy to do, but it is also about those smaller things. And I think actually, I mentioned earlier about feeling really anxious for a while. And I think the thing that shifted for me was I remember being sat in the van. It was a really grey, miserable day. It was winter. And just feeling like I can't cope with this anxiety. Like I'm feeling so scared all the time. I've got to shake myself out of it. And how can I do that? So I went on to a mental health website and just looked for advice. And one of the things was just write yourself some affirmations about things you're proud of. And I thought, oh gosh, that's something I've heard so many times before. And in my job, actually, I'd done that with young people so often, and advise them to be grateful and to be proud and all these things. But had I actually done them myself? No. I got a notebook and I started writing what I was proud of myself for. And I thought, I'm proud that you're brave enough to live in a van. That was the first one. And I'm proud that you were brave enough to move to a new city. And I'm proud that you have stood up and performed some poetry. And before long, I realised I'd been sitting there about 10 minutes and I had this big list, and immediately I felt better. And there was an event that day in Portsmouth in a gallery, run by somebody who I'd seen on the poetry groups, and she was putting this event on, and I'd sort of commented, "Oh, this looks interesting, I might come." And I thought, I'm going to go to that event. I didn't know where it was, and I was a bit scared about how do I get there and when do I park the van. So I thought, right, I'm parked. I'll get on the bus. And I got the bus, found this gallery, and this person, I went in and introduced myself, and she was so warm and welcoming and thrilled that I'd turned up. And actually, she's turned out to be one of my close friends in Portsmouth now. So it's had long-term effects. But I had a wonderful afternoon, and we had a coffee afterwards, and that was my first real connection in Portsmouth. And I think if I hadn't done that exercise, I wouldn't have been brave enough to go and do that and to just walk in and introduce myself to this person. But it really has been wonderful because actually she has introduced me to lots of other people here and helped me fit in and build the community. And we do lots of nice things together, like go for coffee and walks and sea swimming and all these lovely activities that in rural Somerset I just wasn't doing. I'm all for the tackling your mindset. I think we have to be really intentional about it because of those negative thoughts creep in, and you have to keep practicing mindfulness and intentional thinking in order to stay in a good frame of mind.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's definitely lots around the sheer volume of thoughts that we have every day
Yeah.
and how our minds are drawn more towards negativity and how our inner voices are incredibly powerful and they're opinion based so that we can actually challenge our inner voices
Yeah.
and say, hang on a second, is this based on fact or is this based on opinion? And if it's just opinion, then
Mm.
I'm going to just push you to one side. There's so much. Our brains and our minds are so powerful and we process such a small amount of the information
Yes.
because it's just totally overwhelming otherwise. And I think that, like you say, that being really intentional about what we allow ourselves to really think about and what we dismiss is
I
easier said
read
than done.
I read the other day that when we allow the negative thoughts to come in, then our brain automatically makes those connections and repeats them. So it is like a physical thing that's happening in our brain. And I was just fascinated by that. And I thought, so if you're saying positive things, then that's what your brain will learn. So we have to challenge it when it comes in because otherwise we're getting ourselves in that loop. But we can easily get ourselves out of it by just flipping it.
Yeah, there's a whole thing there around visualization as well and manifestation and how our brains can't distinguish between what's real and what's imaginary and how we can shape
Mm,
our reality by our thoughts.
yes.
All of that really fascinates me. I read a lot around
Silly.
those areas.
Me
I think
too.
our minds are so powerful.
And we know so much more than we did 20 years ago as well. Um,
And still so much more to learn. We're
yeah,
scratching the
it's one
surface,
of,
aren't we?
yeah,
Yeah.
100%. I'm sure there's a
Yeah,
poem in there, Emma.
I
You're
think there
inspiring
definitely
me
is.
with a poem. Yeah.
I know we talked a little bit about your plans and what's coming up and off the back of your headlining. What are you really excited about for the rest of 2026?
Probably the first thing is the summer. Having lived through a winter in the van, I think I just can't wait for the summer. Already the sun is out and I feel so much happier. But yeah, so I think embedding myself further into the community in Portsmouth and going a bit wider as well. I'm very excited. I haven't really cemented what it looks like yet, but have a plan to do a bit of an open mic tour around the south of the country. So I'm really excited about that and all of the events that I've got coming up. Really exciting as well. But actually, it's just really exciting to grow as a poet. I really feel like I'm developing my practice all the time. And with every poem I write, I'm exploring something new. So I've been exploring different forms and using humour and some more serious poems and political things. And that's just so exciting to me. Just more creativity, more poetry, more sunshine.
Sounds perfect. And a series of collections,
Yeah, yeah,
themed
exactly.
collections.
Yeah.
So, another question I wanted to ask you is how would you say you compare today, thinking about Kelly today compared to Kelly perhaps in around sort of April, Easter, springtime last year?
Gosh, there's no comparison, Emma, really. And I just can't believe it. I think if you had said to me, I would be living in a van in a completely different city, performing poetry and being asked to go on podcasts and radio shows and to go to festivals and headline at events, I would just say you were mad. It's Saturday. Like I said earlier, Saturday would, this time last year, would look like I probably go and do my grocery shop, go to the library and go and have a coffee with my mum And then I would spend the rest of the weekend reading a book, which I love reading. Books are lovely, but I didn't have the connection. And now today, for the rest of the day, I'm going to go for a lovely walk down the seafront in Southsea. I'm probably going to have a sea swim this afternoon with a friend. Then tomorrow I'm going to a festival on the Castle Fields in Southsea. There's a lovely cultural festival going on tomorrow afternoon. I've got an open mic on Monday as well as a work week. I got a job this week as well, Emma. So very excited.
Congratulations.
Thank you. In a lovely, lovely school, which is helping me carry on as a poet.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
it's a really nice location and something that I love, which is well-being and pastoral, kind of really feeds my soul. So yeah, I'm feeling really lucky and grateful compared to the Kelly of last year who just felt like, oh gosh, is this it? You know?
It's so inspiring. I think so
Well,
many people listening to that would be to know that it's possible, to know that if you're feeling one way and dreaming
yeah,
of something else,
yeah.
that within the space of a year, that dream has become your reality.
Mm,
Your life
mm,
has just totally flipped, but in the most positive ways.
mm.
I just think it's such a wonderful story. I'm so pleased for you. I'm
Oh,
so happy for you. And I'm
thank
so
you.
excited to see you continue to grow
Yeah.
as a poet, but also that other people can be inspired by
Yeah.
your story and the bravery and the courage that you've shown
Oh,
and how it
thank
has
you.
led to that sense of adventure, but in a really positive way.
Thank you. That would be wonderful if someone else is in a similar spot where they were just feeling stuck. Then if it inspires them, that would be wonderful because just think we've only got one life and you've got to grab it. And it is scary and terrifying and it will be hard and challenging, but it's worth it because you can change it. I just think that you can change anything. And I think there were a lot of things when I started this journey that I thought, I don't know how that's going to work. For example, like work. How am I going to work and do poetry and live in a van? But everything has kind of fallen into place now. And it has taken a while and a few months of working out what's right, but something always comes up. Something will always happen so that you'll be okay. And I think it is being okay with the not knowing immediately. I think that is what stopped me before because I thought I can't do things because what about this and what about this? But actually, when you let go of that a bit and go, I'm not exactly sure how that's going to look at this moment, it's freeing because things do happen and fall into place and you'll be okay.
Great words. Thank you. Really, really inspiring and great wisdom to share with others.
No.
And you've kind of, so my final question is normally, if a woman is listening right
Oh,
now that feels the need to
uh,
change, what advice would you give her? What would you want
yeah,
her to know? And I think you just answered that question
yeah.
perfectly. So
Just, just do
instead,
it.
yeah, just do it. Like Nike says, don't sue us. So I'm going to finish instead with a different question.
Okay.
And Kelly, I'd like to ask you, what is your dream?
Hmm.
And that might be a dream now. It doesn't have to be a dream forever, but what's the dream right now?
What's the dream? I think it would be having my poetry published. I've always been such a huge bookworm my whole life since I was age 4. Books were the best thing in the world. So to have a book with my name on it, oh my goodness, my life would be done. I'll just be like, finished now. Thank you very much. No, I
And that's
wouldn't.
so possible. There's nothing,
Yeah,
that's, I
yeah.
guess, given that the journey that you've already been on, that must feel like that's a totally achievable dream now, right?
I yes, it does. Yeah, yeah,
Yes, with
yes.
certainty. Yes.
Yes, oh, why, Emma? Yes.
Yes. So next time we talk on the podcast, it will be to announce the release of your book because you've made that dream happen and you'll have to dream a bigger dream.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. Okay, I will
No
start
pressure.
thinking of the bigger dreams.
The bigger dreams. Yeah. Line them up
Yeah.
one at a time. Let's tick them
World
off.
world dominance is next on my agenda.
Yeah. That's not something that I dream of.
Yeah. I
Maybe
mean,
poetry world dominance.
yeah, yeah. World dominance by menopausal women. I think we would have it sussed.
Could be a terrifying place for men.
Yes.
Maybe we should stop. Well, thank you so much, Kelly. It's been an absolute honour to speak to you today. And I'm so grateful to you for coming here and sharing your story and inspiring others and letting us know how our dreams are possible. So thank you ever so much. I really do appreciate you giving your time and sharing so honestly what you've been through.
Oh, thank you so much, Emma. I've absolutely loved this. I could speak for hours. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for allowing Kelly and I to be a small part of your day-to-day. If you've enjoyed this episode, please hit subscribe to be notified by your podcasting platform when future episodes are released. I will be back next week for a regular solo episode. Until then, take care, thanks for listening, and I'll see you soon.